All right, so the question is, which detail adds layers of meaning through a tone of sadness and longing for the past to the theme identified in part A? So we have an excerpt of the necklace. We've kind of been working with bits and pieces of this story throughout this week. Here's the excerpt. This life lasted 10 years. At the end of 10 years, they had paid everything, with the rates of usury and the accumulations of the compound interest. Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become the woman of the impoverished households, strong and hard and rough. With frowsy hair, skirts askew, and red hands, she talked aloud while washing the floor with great swishes of water. But sometimes, when her husband was at the office, she sat down near the window and thought of that gay evening long ago, of that ball where she had been so beautiful and so admired. What would have happened if she had not lost that necklace? Who knows? Who knows? How strange and changeful life is. How small a thing is needed to make or ruin us. So which detail adds which detail adds a layer of meaning through a tone of sadness and longing to the past? Is it A, at the end of 10 years, they had paid everything with the rates of usury and accumulations of the compound interest? B, Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become the woman of impoverished households, strong and hard and rough. C, but sometimes when her husband was at the office, she sat down near the window and she thought of that evening long ago, that ball where she had been so beautiful and so admired. Or D, how strange and changeful is life. How small a thing is needed to make or ruin us. So which detail from that excerpt adds meaning through a tone of sadness and longing for the past? If there's longing for the past, it means you want to go back to that particular time. You're wishing you could go back to that time. Katrina?
C.
C. Rennie, do you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah? Michelle, do you agree?
Yeah.
C is the correct answer. C is the correct answer because it says sometimes when her husband was at the office, she sat down near the window and thought of that evening long ago, of that ball where she had been so beautiful and so admired. So that is the perfect example of longing for the past. She wishes she could go back to that singular moment in time where she felt like she actually had the life that she deserved. So A, it talks about how at the end of 10 years they had paid everything back with interest. And although that kind of has sadness to it, it's more like remorse, because at the end of the story she finds out that the necklace was a fake. So it's not necessarily sadness and longing, it's more like remorse and regret. B, Madame Loisel looked old now. She had become the woman of impoverished households, strong and hard and rough. Again, it's not really exemplifying or giving us an example of sadness or longing. It's kind of telling us what she has turned into as a result of her actions. And D, how strange and changeful is life. How small a thing is needed to make or ruin us. Again, it's not really, it's more like rhetorical questions, right? Like getting you to think about your choices, think about the past, and think about the future. So C is really the only option that has that feeling of sadness and that feeling for the longing for the past, the wanting to go back to once what was. Are there any questions of that? You don't have to include an explanation, just the letter of the correct answer for this one. No questions? Are there any questions on universal theme? Any questions of anything that you've worked on this week? I know I was out Wednesday, Thursday. Should we go over those real quick? Okay. So Wednesday. Read paragraphs 86 through 89. How do specific details about character, setting, and plot enhance and add layers of meaning to the universal theme as the story progresses? So 86 through 89. They found a shaft in Palaces Royale, a string of diamonds that seemed to them exactly like the one they had lost. It was worth 40,000 francs. They could have it for 36. That's like the equivalent of like $36,000. So they begged the jeweler not to sell it for 3 days. And they made a bargain that they should buy it back for 34,000 francs in case they should find the lost necklace before the end of February. Loisel possessed 18,000 francs, which his father had left him. He would borrow the rest. He did borrow, asking 1,000 francs of one, 500 of another, 5 louis here, 3 louis here. He gave notes, took up ruinous obligations, dealt with usurers and all the race of lenders. He compromised all the rest of his life, risked signing a note without even knowing whether he could meet it, and frightened by the trouble yet to come, by the black misery that was about to fall upon him, by the prospect of all the physical privations and moral tortures that he was to suffer, he went to get the new necklace, laying upon the jeweler's counter 36,000 francs. So how do the specific details, the literary elements, character, setting, and plot, enhance and add layers of meaning to the universal theme? So what do you think? Think about the characters. Specifically the characters. Is he thinking about the future?
No.
Is he thinking about the repercussions of his actions? Like the consequences of his actions?
Yeah.
Kind of, right? But he feels like he's stuck because he owes the money for the necklace, right? So he's thinking about those choices. Because it says, frightened by the trouble yet to come, by the black misery that was about to fall upon him, but he has no choice, so he does it anyway. So they spend $34,000 for that new necklace, and it adds layers of meaning by suggesting that avoiding embarrassment and humiliation, social embarrassment and social humiliation, bless you, is worth risking one's life. Right? We talked about that on Tuesday also when she ran outside without her wrap, her shawl, her jacket on. All of this is to avoid social embarrassment and humiliation. So Matilda does it on the previous day in our Tuesday's question, and her husband does it today. So the characters are continuing to add layers of meaning to that universal theme by suggesting that avoiding embarrassment at all costs is worth the risk. Okay, that was Wednesdays. You good on that one? All right, this is an easy one. Why is this an example of a universal theme, and explain what it means? The conflict between humans and advancement in technology and science. Why is this universal? Because it applies to everybody, everywhere. Everybody uses technology in some way, shape, or form, whether it's smartphones, whether it's computers, whether it's software programs, apps, right? Technology is universal because it applies to everyone, anywhere. And what does this mean? Everyone has to deal with the advancements of technology. Some of those advancements are positive, some of them are negative, right? We've spent a lot of time this year talking about cell phones in school and why cell phones need to be put away, out of sight, in our backpacks, away from our desks, because even in school, they're a distraction, or at least a potential distraction, right? So it means that everyone, everywhere, has to deal with the pros and cons of the advancements of technology. Some of them are awesome and amazing and beneficial. Some of them are not. Okay? Any questions on bell work this week? So I don't want you to get up and turn it in right now, but you are going to turn this in before you leave. If you happen to have it in your notebook, because you didn't have your bell work paper, just put your notebook in the basket. Just make sure your name is on it before you do. Okay? All right, guys, we are going to finish the origin of intelligence once and for all, so please open your notebooks. We have a few notes to write down. Not many, just a few. we've spent a lot of time on this article. We have talked about text structure and text features. We have talked about central idea. And today we are going to wrap up with arguments and claims. So we don't have a lot of notes today. We have a few review notes today, starting with the benchmark. I want you to write down this benchmark as you see it in your notebook. R2.4 says compare the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. You don't have to write down anything other than the benchmark itself. I'm going to pause this real quick. R2.4 is compare the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. Compare the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. Sorry. There we go. Compare the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. So in our article, The Origin of Intelligence, I know it's been a couple of days since we visited that article because I was out with that stomach bug. So what is the topic of the arguments in that article? Come on, guys, give me something. It's in the title. Intelligence, right? The topic of the article is intelligence. The two opposing arguments is intelligence is genetic and inherited through genes versus intelligence is determined by surroundings and environment. So we have the same topic of intelligence, but we have two conflicting arguments. Genetics versus environment. Yes? No, just write the benchmark itself. You don't have to write the clarification at the bottom. Compare the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. We'll say about 30 more seconds, guys. 30 more seconds. All right, guys. We don't have lots of notes. You don't have to write this down. So the essential question, how do I compare opposing arguments on the same topic, evaluating the effectiveness and validity of the claims. Remember, our essential question is always closely related to the benchmark itself. Nope, you don't have to write this down. You do have to write down the 3 words in purple, though. All arguments have 3 main elements. The first being the claim. The claim is the author's position on the topic, or what the author wants you to know or believe. In other words, it's what the author is going to argue. The claim is what the author wants you to know or believe. Evidence. Evidence is proof. How the author supports what he or she wants you to believe. Evidence is how the author supports what he or she wants you to believe. And element number 3 is reasoning. How the evidence supports the claim or why the evidence makes sense. Reasoning is how the evidence supports the claim or why the evidence makes sense. Remember, guys, this is all review. We've covered this before. It was a long, long time ago when we were reading the article Restless Genes. And I think this article, The Origin of Intelligence, does a much better job of giving us arguments that are easy to compare and evaluate. So these 3 elements, claim, evidence, and reasoning, are elements that all arguments must have. Claim is what the author wants you to know or believe. It's their position on the topic or the side that they are going to argue. Evidence is their proof. How the author supports what he or she wants you to believe. And reasoning is how the evidence supports the claim or why the evidence makes sense. The claim is what the author wants you to know or believe. Evidence is how the author supports what he or she wants you to believe. And reasoning is how the evidence supports the claim or why the evidence makes sense. All arguments must include these 3 elements: claim, evidence, and reasoning. Claim is what the author wants you to know or believe. It's their position on the topic, the side that he or she is going to argue. The evidence, it's the proof, how the author supports what he or she wants you to believe. And the reasoning, how the evidence supports the claim or why the evidence makes sense. We'll say about 30 more seconds. I still see a couple pencils moving. One more slide. I think this is the last thing you have to write down. We good to move on? Yes? Okay. Oh, I lied. One more slide. So the word validity. Is it a valid argument? This is the last thing you have to write down. Valid means of source, truthful in respect to the information presented. Meaning, is the evidence and the proof being presented in a way that is actual and straightforward? And the word validity refers to the soundness of the argument. If it is a sound argument, it means it is wholly and actually fully supported. There are no holes, flaws, or omissions in the argument. Valid referring of a source, truthful in respect to the information presented. The word validity refers to the soundness of the argument. Valid is of a source, truthful in respect to the information presented. Validity refers to the soundness of an argument. When you read the argument, when you read the support, do you find holes? Do you find flaws? Do you find omissions? Or is the argument wholly and fully supported? And we're gonna talk about that with the origin of intelligence in just a moment. Valid means of a source, truthful in respect to the information presented, and validity refers to the soundness of arguments. All right, guys, so you don't have to write anything down, okay? This is just our checklist. In order to identify the development of two opposing arguments on the same topic, note the following: the argument that each author is making, the claim or central idea of each argument, the kind of evidence that supports each claim, where each author supports his or her claim with reasoning and explanations, the type of reasoning, inductive, abductive, or deductive, that each author uses, and the similarities and differences in the reasons and evidence each author uses. So we're going to talk about these points, these questions, in just a moment. So please, guys, either take out your printed copy of the Origin of Intelligence or open your textbooks to page 399. Either one. Your printed copy or open your textbooks to page 399. So we're going to go through a couple of these together, and then you're going to do a couple on your own. So you are going to write these answers in your notebooks, but you do need access to the text. So the first, gentlemen, excuse me. The first question, and hopefully this is an easy one. Like I said, I know we've been taking a break from this passage for a couple of days while I was out sick. But hopefully you remember the answer to question number 1. So what is each author's claim or position in the point article and the counterpoint article? So remember, this article is a little bit unique because it is one text, the Origin of Intelligence, but within this text we have our point argument and our counterpoint argument. So refresh my memory, guys. What is the claim in the point argument? Katrina.
The intelligence was inherited?
Exactly. Yes. Short, sweet, to the point. The argument that the author is making in the point article is that intelligence is genetic. It is inherited. claim that the point argument is making is that intelligence is genetic or inherited. And it's not asking for support, but if we needed support, that very first sentence, Charles Darwin believed that his own intellectual capabilities were innate and that education and environment had little effect on basic intelligence. That word innate, what does innate mean? If intelligence is innate, Jonathan, what does it mean?
Oh, I was gonna ask where we write this in our notebook, right?
In your notebook, yes.
Okay.
But if intelligence is genetic and it's inherited from your ancestors and it's innate, what does that mean?
Like it passed down, like you got it from something.
Like you're born with it, right? That's what innate means. You already have it. You are born with it, and you get that from your genes, from your genetics.
Do we have to write the question?
No, don't write the question. Just write the answer. Just write number 1. So this is for the point article, and if you didn't know, I know it's Friday. I know it's been a long week. Believe me, it's been a really long week for me too. But look at the title of this point article. Intelligence. It's all in the genes. There's your clue that the argument is intelligence is genetic. So that's the point article. That's the point argument. The counterpoint. The counterpoint starts on page 401 if you're in your textbook. Oh my gosh, I can't type today. So look at the title of the counterpoint. Your childhood IQ does not limit you. So what is the claim in the counterpoint article? Katrina, you're on a roll today.
That the brain grows.
That the brain grows over time. So intelligence is more influenced by environment than genetics. Excellent. I'll make this bigger. The claim in the point article is that intelligence is genetic or inherited, meaning you have all that you're going to get at birth because your intelligence is innate. It's already within you. The claim in the counterpoint article, the opposing argument, is that intelligence is more influenced by environment and surroundings than genetics because the brain can grow and change over time. And proof for that, it's not asking for text evidence, but if it was, paragraph 8, whether intelligence depends on nature, heredity, or nurture environment is a point hotly debated by researchers and scientists. Recent brain studies indicate that the brain is malleable over time. It grows and develops and matures just as the rest of the body does. For that reason, it is important to create an environment in which brains of children and young people can flourish, reaching their highest achievable potential. So remember, we have our same topic, it's intelligence, but 2 opposing arguments. That intelligence is genetic versus intelligence is impacted by environment. So we just talked about number 2. For the sake of time, we're going to skip number 2 because number 2 is asking for evidence that supports each claim, but we just talked about that. Okay? And there's several pieces of evidence that supports both the point article, the point argument that intelligence is genetic, and the counterpoint that intelligence is based on environment. So let's question of number 4. So this comes from paragraph 2 of our article. It says, when I look around today at the families I know, Darwin's ideas, though limited, seem logical. Most of the students who perform best in my high school come from families where both parents and children are highly accomplished and obviously intelligent. If one student takes an AP class, you can expect that his or her siblings will also take that class as they move through the grades. Extrapolating outward, you can predict a correlation between parents' intelligence and that of their children. How does the author support their claim that intelligence is inherited in the paragraph above? Is it effective? And explain. So there's one word that I want to point out in here before I give you a couple minutes to answer this question. The word extrapolating. That is one of the vocabulary words that we had at the end of last week as we started the origin of intelligence. Do you remember what that word extrapolating means? Extrapolating outward, you can predict a correlation between parents' intelligence and that of their children. It should be in your notebook, but if you don't remember, look at those context clues. Extrapolating outward. Lucas, what do you think?
Something from something already known.
Very good. You are making an inference based on something you already know. So if Katrina's parents are geniuses, then I can make an inference that Katrina is also a genius. You are making an inference based on something already known, or making a prediction based on something that you already know. Okay? So we'll read that paragraph again, and then I'm going to give you a couple minutes to answer this question. When I look around today at the families I know, Darwin's ideas, though limited, seem logical. Most of the students who perform best in my high school come from families where both parents and children are highly accomplished and obviously intelligent. If one student takes an AP class, you can expect that his or her siblings will also take that same class as they move through the grades. Extrapolating outward, you can predict a correlation between parents' intelligence and that of their children. So that's the support, right? That's the evidence. So how does the author support the claim that intelligence is inherited? In that paragraph, is it effective? Do you believe it? Why or why not? Go ahead and we'll say 2 minutes. There is a personal opinion attached to this. So there's not necessarily a wrong answer based on your explanation. So take just a couple of minutes. Do you believe that if one student takes an AP class, you can expect his or her siblings also to take that same class as they move through the grades? Extrapolating outward, you can predict a correlation between parents' intelligence and that of their children. Do you believe that this is effective? Why or why not? When we're talking about it being effective, it means, do you believe it? Is it adequate support for the argument that they are making? Explain your response. And remember, guys, we've talked a lot about the importance of your explanation, not only because it shows your thought process, but it can also get you points / credit where possibly you wouldn't have gotten it before. And that happened a lot last week with the bell work. There were lots of answers given with explanations that made complete sense and earned students points that they might not otherwise otherwise have gotten if they just put a one-word answer or just the multiple choice answer. When I look around today at the families I know, Darwin's ideas, though limited, seem logical. Most of the students who perform best in my high school come from families where both parents and children are highly accomplished and obviously intelligent. If one student takes an AP class, you can expect that his or her siblings will also take that class as they move through the grades. Extrapolating outward, you can predict a correlation between parents' intelligence and that of their children. How does the author support their claim that intelligence is inherited in the paragraph above? Is it effective? Why or why not? So guys, we're almost out of time. Nobody move yet. We'll start with this on Monday because I want to hear the responses. But just a quick poll: how many of you find this this evidence, the support, effective? Just raise your hand really quick. Do you find it effective? How many don't find it effective? We'll talk about it on Monday. Bell worksheets. Make sure your name, first name, last name, class period is on your bell worksheet. Please put your bell worksheet in the basket before you leave today. Do not forget, please. Continue to fill out that regrade form as you're working on late and missing assignments. That is the only way you will get credit for work that you are completing. Thank you again, guys, for your cooperation with the sub the last couple of days. That definitely was not in my plan for the week. I appreciate it.